How resilient is India to a spike in crude oil prices today?
Sure. Very good question. I know in most cases we always discuss this issue because the reality is that India is very dependent on imported crude to meet its oil requirement. Because simply put, India is not self-sufficient either in crude oil or in natural gas to meet its requirements. So therefore, we end up importing these two. It's a significant part of our bill. And However, what has happened in recent years is that India's services exports have grown to becoming much higher than our oil imports. So if you look at the left-hand side chart, the blue line shows you India's oil imports in dollars, and the black line is India's IT exports. And you can see that for many years, the blue line used to be above that black line. Then again, in 2022, when crude prices spiked up, the blue line temporarily went above the black line. But today, it remains significantly below. Of course, this assumes that FY27 crude prices remain at $80 a barrel, higher than the pre-conflict level, but lower than where they are today. So this is what has actually changed in terms of India's ability to absorb a crude oil price spike, which is that today we have enough exports which give us some kind of safety against these kind of spikes. The other, sort of point I think which is important to look at in this environment is that even if the crude oil prices were to average closer to $90 per barrel, what you see on the right hand side chart is that India's current account deficit would remain about 2% or lower. And remember, RBI has typically articulated 2% current account deficit as being within its comfort zone. That is something which means that, up to $90 a barrel is something that we would not worry about too much on a macro stability issue. Of course, this would create some issues on the fiscal account, particularly if the government does not increase fuel prices. And secondly, this would also have an impact on inflation, both direct and indirect impact. And every $10 increase in crude prices as compared to the base level approximately adds about potentially 50 basis points to CPI inflation. The good news is that CPI is well within the comfort zone, and in the short term, the RBI does tend to look through the initial impact of crude on inflation. But I would essentially sum this up to say that today India is much better placed to absorb shocks in terms of crude oil price hikes as compared to what it used to be earlier.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.